Hey, welcome back to Overhead Athletics. Max Wardell here. We're talking about a few ways you can improve softball throwing mechanics. Some of these drills are really simple to implement, but can give your athletes a lot of positive correction to their throwing mechanics and take them away from some of the positions that cause injury and inefficiency, which leads to poor speed throwing on the diamond. First thing we see with a lot of softball players is they swing their glove way out and around and they don't control their front side. Now that's often a problem with how they load their pelvis, and we'll talk more about that later in this video. But it can also be corrected by adding some mass to that front arm so they don't want to swing it so much. What I mean by that is we'll take a 2-pound ball or even a 1-pound ball and put it right into the glove. By putting that ball into the glove, that's a cue that will tell that athlete if they swing out and around, it's going to throw them way off balance, and they don't like to be off balance. So they're immediately going to start to correct that error of swinging that front side way too far out and around automatically. From there, we kind of put them in a closed or staggered stance where that front foot is kind of forward. And we do that because we're going to put them closed from the target as compared to what a lot of athletes do, where they start immediately open facing the target. So we start them closed, and then we want to work on to the arm action. The arm action is really important for softball players, and we see a lot of softball players with poor, inefficient mechanics and incorrect arm path as a result of how they learn to throw at a young age. Because softball players, something that's fairly unique, and we talk about it in baseball sometimes, but the softball players that aren't skeletally mature, that are weak at a very young age, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're holding this big softball that's heavy. Even though the softball size can scale a little bit, it's still heavy and big. They end up dragging their arm, dropping their elbow, so we'll take them away from that and put their arm in a better position to accelerate the ball. That means the ball's about forehead height, eyebrow height. The elbow is high as the shoulder, because we see a lot of athletes get that elbow really high and then drop it down. So we call this our internal rotation apex position. It's a primary position we use with our throwing athletes. We put them out in front of the body, ball facing away, about forehead height with the elbow as high as the shoulder. We've got them in an athletic stance where they're loaded, and in that staggered stance position, we have them throw from there. Now the nice thing is for our softball players, infield and outfield catcher alike, despite the fact that you hear that throwing mechanics need to change based on position, when you watch the best throwers in the world, you'll see that's not really the case. We put them in a position where they're learning to throw from a proper arm position, where they've taken out that drag element in their throw, and now they're going to teach themselves to get the ball from the fielding position up right into that position. So they're taking the ball from the fielding position or from a pop fly right into that internal rotation apex and coming right through. And we see the same thing in baseball. That's why we see athletes that throw extremely hard, some of the highest velocities ever from the outfield and from the catcher position as well as from the infield, all occur from right there. Same thing for our pitchers. That's where we create velocity in baseball. The same thing in softball. Throwing is throwing. The human body is the human body. Softball players don't throw too much different than baseball players, or they really shouldn't. We get them into that position where they're going to bring the ball to the right position and accelerate through. Now, if you have an athlete who's having some difficulty loading that hip, because we talked about how this is a pelvic issue as well, we'll get them striding over something if they don't stride far enough and they have good flexibility. So they're going to step over a physical object as compared to just a line on the floor. That physical object, a piece of foam, will actually teach the athlete and activate some of their subconscious mechanisms to get over something and stride farther. The line on the floor, our brain kind of ignores it a lot of times. So putting something physical on the floor to make them stride an extra few inches can be effective. We'll also work on the back hip by adding some momentum and inertia. How do we do that? A step behind throw or a crow hop. Use that same arm position and have them do a step behind. Then have them come from the glove and do a step behind and come through. One of the other things that we'll use later on, or sometimes early, to clean up arm action is have them start with the ball across the body. By starting with the ball across the body to the front hip, they actually have to pull the ball up and back and across as opposed to out and around, which leads to them dragging or getting to this kind of cobra or dragon position or whatever it's called in some of these common drills where their arm is out here and then they end up falling around. So we'll have them start across their body just so they can pull right into that proper position as they come through. And we've seen this clean up throwing mechanics in a lot of our softball players. If you guys want to see more content on softball and softball throwing mechanics, Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, because we're definitely going to put more content out. Subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And if you guys like this one, do me a favor. It helps out the channel a lot. Hit the thumbs up, give us a like, and we'll see you guys in the next video.